Shabbat Shalom and Yasher Koach to all our Torah readers and leaders from the men's club today. I thought the Parsha was interesting. We heard words like smoke and tent and fire, meat, community elders, a pleasing aroma. Is it me, or did the Torah have a plug for the Dallas Kosher Barbecue Championship? I think that might have been in Brian's reading. I'm not sure. So at first reading of the Parsha, the animal sacrifices sounded very foreign from the Judaism that I participate in and love today. Through understanding the Hebrew word for sacrifice and its root, I found the connection and meaning in these practices. Karban has its root in the concept of being close. It's based on the three Hebrew letters Kuf, Resh, Bet, which relates to drawing near. It's the same root in the word Kiruv, the outreach group to draw interfaith families closer to our community. When an individual presented an offering at the temple, it was meant as a demonstration of the desire to draw closer to God. One comes closer to God by giving back or giving up some of the life that had been gifted to nourish and sustain us. Specific sacrifices demonstrated specific feelings. The Torah mentions 5 different types of sacrifice: the burnt offering, the grain, the sin offering, the guilt offering, and the sacrifice of well-being, or the peace offering. The peace offering was not for a person who had sinned, but rather for a person that had positive feelings and wanted to share with Hashem those good feelings. Fast forward to 70 CE. Then the second temple was destroyed. Without the temple, sacrifices are no longer done. In fact, they're prohibited. And instead, it was prayer that was substituted from that point on. It's okay, though, that we're not sacrificing anymore. As the great 12th century Torah scholar Maimonides wrote, sacrifice was inferior to prayer or even philosophical meditation. In biblical times, Maimonides relates, mankind was not yet ready to move away from the familiar practice of sacrifice that they saw in the pagan communities all around them. That's why it took so much time before prayer was substituted for the sacrifice. Prayer satisfies the Karban in that it clearly draws us close to God. But think a moment about the common translation of the word Karban, sacrifice. I believe we may still be bringing an offering or sacrifice, even in today's world, as was the custom in ancient times when you were to bring something of value that was yours alone. Then what is it today that we sacrifice? To me, the sacrifice or offering is our time. With the current day world such a busy place, adults working long hours, kids being overscheduled with activities, I believe it's out of reverence and love of God that we come together and give our time in communal prayer. One might retort that time is not ours, that it's God that has jurisdiction over our time. The same was true of the animal being sacrificed at the temple. God did not need us to bring an animal to be killed. He could do that himself. The important part in the process was that it was us coming to draw closer to God. Along the lines of offering your time, I'd be remiss to not thank the many volunteers in our men's club for making this Sheldon Fisher Men's Club Shabbat such a special one. Yasher Koach to Phil Stamen and David Mandel as co-chairs of our event today. And a special thanks to Jeff Markowitz for working closely with David and helping for the preparation and planning of all the wonderful food. And you'll see that in just a moment. So to all our volunteers, whether you led, read, or made bread, Yasher Koach and thank you. Of all the sacrifices mentioned, peace offerings were unique and that it was the only one that allowed the donor of the animal and the community to partake in the meal. The other offerings only allowed the priest and sometimes the donor to eat the meal. Thus, the peace offering allowed the community to draw closer together and to strengthen its power by the sharing of a communal meal and of the sacred offering. God received the offering. Kohanim received their share. The donor and even the community as well were all satisfied. Well, except for the goat. So how do sacrifices relate to us in this modern era, or more specifically here at Beth Torah in the Men's Club? The mainstay of our Men's Club programming is our Sunday breakfast program. Minyan prayers, followed by breakfast and a speaker presentation. Similar to the peace offering, Men's Club comes together to pray, drawing closer to God, and share a meal, drawing close to the community. And the kosher meal, of course, adds to the respect for God's laws, and thus each of us participate in a mitzvah. So through prayer, we establish a closeness with God, and through the meal, we establish a closeness with our other members of our community. I want to point out an interesting observation about the motzi blessing and how it relates to Vaylkra. It's customary to wash our hands before saying the motzi, similar to how priests were commanded to do this before bringing a sacrifice. After reciting the motzi, it's traditional to salt the bread, just as the priest would also salt every sacrifice. In my mind, the motzi is similar to the peace offering in that all the people around the table draw a little closer to God and get to share in the food, so the vestiges of the sacrifice are still around today. In conclusion, the peace offering was a special sacrifice where everyone got something. Similarly, in our Men's Club and our Beth Torah community, we have programs centered around prayer and food. Together we draw closer to God and community. I hope this devar provided some insight into our Torah reading today. May each of us have the ability to see how our own modern-day carbonot draw us closer to God and each other. Shabbat Shalom.